if they're in a situation where they can't live with starting a family, like having a child, do you think
Have an adoption?
But okay,
Or they get put into a system, which is another sad thing.
Yeah,
I think people would rather take the system over being killed. Would you agree with that?
See?
What's going on, everyone? James Klug here. Welcome back to another Let's Talk. Today, I'm here with Isabella Riley. Isabella, how you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Very good. We brought a sign with us that says, I am pro-life, and we're going to go find people that disagree. You ready to go talk to some people?
Oh, yes, I am.
Let's go talk to some people.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am pro-choice, and it's not because personally that I've had an abortion or I would want to. It's just because I respect the right of a woman to partition a fetus from her body, and it's not for any to assume any particular reason, just whatever her reason is. I don't want to overwrite what she feels that she needs to do with her body.
I mean, you mentioned her body. Is it her body, or is that a unique human life?
It's both. I'll admit it's both.
We can simplify it. Anti-abortion, pro-abortion. For
I'm anti. No, I'm pro. I'm pro. Oh my God, I'm pro.
human life, it does start at conception. It is a human being
does,
inside
yes.
the mother's womb, and I believe in protecting that because left to its natural processes, it turns into you and me. I don't believe that you should be killed at any point. You, her, anything like that, and I certainly don't want to die myself. I know from a person speaking from great privilege of my mother choosing life and me
Right.
being here today that I want to fight for that right for other people as well.
But there's certain things that, dictate why that. I'm just getting too deep.
I'm not forcing you to be here to talk to me, but I would love
No,
to.
I'm always
We can have a good conversation.
Yeah, we could, yeah. I'd probably end up twisting it all around on myself, but yeah.
Are you pro-choice or pro-life?
I'm pro-choice. Yeah.
So you guys are both pro-choice.
Yeah.
I believe, life begins at conception. That's a unique human being according to science.
Sure.
We should protect that human life. Where am I going wrong here, you guys? What's going on?
What if your daughter gets raped
Okay.
by a man, right? If she gets pregnant from this man, how would you react?
Yeah. Well, really quick, I just want to clarify our stance here. Are we okay or are we against abortions for the other 99.5% of abortions or no?
Again, it depends on the situation. Again, I think
So are we just bringing up the most extreme case to start right there? I mean, I'd hate to fixate on that and not talk about the other 99.5% of
Still
abortions.
true.
I mean, you're bringing up the most. This is kind of
Yeah.
you're bringing up the most intense, most emotional argument first,
Uh-huh.
rather than addressing the big picture.
I think what he was trying to do was just try to outline exactly an instance in which a lot of people would agree that would be something that's fine, to show that it's not a 100% situation of in all cases it should absolutely be illegal, and show that there are instances of that.
You're going to try to argue with me on this? Mm-hmm. No, don't. Just put your microphone away.
Wait, so I can't argue it?
No, we're not in a court.
We're not in a. You can only argue in court. What do we think, huh? Damn. I'm not wearing my invisible cloak today, am I? Okay.
Right, I'm not going to be one of the. I don't get what the other side is. What are they talking about?
Okay, so we know it's
honestly,
life. We know
yeah.
it's
I personally, I wouldn't get an abortion, but my hope for the future is this is where I root for technology.
Yeah.
I root for technology that one day will allow a partition of a woman from the fetus where the fetus lives, no matter what stage. But I'm not going to pretend I don't understand the other side. What's all that hubbub about?
And I appreciate you being honest. I mean, really, I think the main thing that I have a question for is government's role is to protect life, obviously, correct? So what's the difference between maybe a one-day-old baby and a baby in the womb? Do you believe that abortion's at least wrong at some level, or are you okay with it up to term, like a full term, 9 months?
I personally, I'll be honest. I need to do more research to see if there's even a way we can define the law so that it covers every single woman's circumstance.
And I would never dictate to someone else, like you, for instance, what to do.
But are you dictating what they should do? Are you, I think the pro-life stance
No,
is
if
more
you're
of just
voting,
being anti-killing a baby.
Is it the mother that dies, or is it the child inside of her that dies? Right, so it's not dictating what to do with her body, except it's dictating that child no longer has a chance for life at all. When I think life is the most basic human right.
It is, yes. But at the other side of it, sometimes that life form won't survive outside the womb.
Would an infant survive outside the womb without her mother or someone taking care of it?
But if it has a genetic issue, or if it has without a mother taking
most
care of
co-
it?
I
Yeah,
think most
because
college
someone
students
else
couldn't
would
survive
give it-
outside the womb
Well, I'll agree with
without their
that.
mother.
I'll agree with that one.
In terms of scientific basis of what classifies as a human being and what most people would classify as a human being, heartbeat for a child doesn't even begin within like the first couple of weeks. Brain activity doesn't happen for a good amount of time after that either. And
So what identifies a human life to you then out of those?
what would identify post-birth in my brain?
Post-birth.
Post-birth would probably identify as a
So
human being.
one day
somewhere-
before being born.
somewhere between there and the third trimester likely. But I mean, you know your statistics. Third trimester abortions account for like less than 1%. Most of it's
Still over. I mean, it's 10 to 12,000 abortions per year. So you don't believe in even outlawing those? Is that correct?
Sure, but if we go back to the 1% thing. 1% of abortions account for rape and incest, and then in terms of the amount
Less,
of abortions,
much less.
sure, but then even then, third trimester abortions account for maybe 1%. I'm
Yeah.
not even positive on the statistics.
The
on that,
majority-
but it's not a large amount.
The majority of abortions that are late term, and we are talking about a very small amount. You're right about that.
Yeah.
But it is still 10 to 12,000 babies per year. The majority of late term abortions are out of convenience.
What I'm saying is they usually get given up for adoption, or someone else takes care of them, or they get put into a system, which is another sad thing.
Yeah,
I think people would rather take the system over being killed. Would you agree with that?
See?
Appreciate you being
Yeah, we
honest.
have many reasons why it happens, and
Yeah.
that again is up to the person that's doing it.
But what you're saying is they might have a hard life in foster, therefore just kill them. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the best argument.
They'll end up doing that to themselves sometimes. I'm just
That's
saying,
inevitable?
again,
They're
it's
100%
not
guaranteed?
Personally, at full term, I would think right off the bat, like my thought was like, yeah, you would never be justified to kill the baby at full term. But I don't know if you could codify that law that would encompass every single woman's circumstance. People say,
Could you name a circumstance or a couple? What do you mean by that? If you don't mind me asking.
Personally, I'm with you on that. I'm like super skeptical. Like 20 weeks, or I think at that point I'm very skeptical.
It looks like a baby at 20 weeks.
Just its ability to survive outside of the womb. I'm very skeptical at that point of like why a woman would need to kill the baby. Maybe that should be a protected right to partition at that point.
Survival outside the room the indicator for, that's a human life, don't kill it? Is that what it is for you? Because there's a lot of humans that rely on technology to keep them alive.
I think it's subjective. Personally, I wouldn't get an abortion. And in the future, I understand both sides. And in the future, I hope that we have the technology so that no matter when the fetus and the woman part, the fetus can still live. But in the meantime, I understand both sides, and I say leave it to the individual for now.
We've had a
Are
family
people?
member who
But
had to do this because of a genetic issue.
but if someone has it,
died, and the twin that was surviving in the womb would not have survived outside of the womb. In fact, it probably would have died before.
But you don't need to perform an abortion if a baby's just not going to make it. I mean, that's not necessarily an abortion. Some babies just don't make it, and that's incredibly sad, right? Like a lot of women have miscarriages, stuff like that. But we're talking about abortion here. We're talking about voluntarily ending a human life.
does a human who has a genetic issue, is it like less of a life that they don't have a chance, they don't deserve a chance for life
Are you
themselves?
going to look after all those babies that are born like that?
There's a lot of people that happily do so.
I know there are, but there are a lot that don't.
I hate to only focus on like the worst case scenario of babies that just simply won't survive outside of the womb and excuse the rest of the conversation. I mean, that's less than 1% when it comes to actual babies that are being aborted in the United States.
But that's where I feel
Or around
we
1%.
shouldn't
Do
make
you
that
think it's life at
decision.
conception though? Because I don't. That's what.
Why do you not believe so?
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you.
And then are we just talking about the extremes because we don't feel comfortable with those extremes, or are we just leveraging those to change the whole conversation?
If you want a situation that's not an extreme, let's say you have two teenagers who aren't like they're not ready to have a child, they're not ready to start a family. Do you think that child deserves to be raised like if they're in a situation where they can't live with starting a family, like having a child? Do you think
Have an
like,
adoption.
But okay, it's so hard to get adopted.
It's not correct. In the
Is it
United
not?
States,
Do you think that bad circumstances are superior than someone's right to life? I personally think that the right to life is the most basic fundamental human right. Life precedes liberty. What are your thoughts on that?
What is going on?
Life, yes, and I can understand the perspective of life precedes liberty, but we're talking about situations in which most people can't even agree to classify like it as a life, and even in instances like even if we go to the most extreme of like okay, all abortion illegal, the second conception happens, that is a child, scientifically based. What is it? You measure it with like a heartbeat, you measure it with brain activity. That doesn't happen
it's a
until
unique
weeks later.
DNA. It's a different person.
It's unique DNA.
Yeah.
So like what is it? The second that sperm touches that egg,
You have a unique DNA formed. Hair color, eye color, height, all of this is decided. That's a unique person. That's not you. That's the person. That's why when you get an abortion, you kill the person. You don't kill you.
One question I did want to ask you is the mother's circumstance, does that supersede the baby's right to life?
It's hard for me to define because I wasn't prepared to, no one's really asked me so much about this, but here's what I'm trying to define. I think the woman has a right to separate the fetus from her body. I don't think that she has a right to kill, if the fetus separates, she doesn't have a right to kill them. In the same way, it doesn't make sense that, if the fetus is viable, that a separation would result in the fetus's death.
You're for it if it can't survive out of the womb. You're not for it if it can. Is that? Am I getting this right or no?
I'm not for it. I'm not for death at all. But if it can't survive out of the womb, that is the outcome. And I don't understand, if it can survive out of the womb, why is death the outcome? That's what confuses me.
When it comes to a secular argument, I mean, that is a human life. It's certainly not a raccoon or a cute little black dog walking by. You know what I mean? It is a human life.
Yeah. From the moment of conception, there's a unique genetic code that's unique to that individual life, and that's. I always say I don't think that life starts at conception. I know it does. The science does prove it. It's a unique genetic code right from the second of conception. So.
Do you disagree with
that?
When
that genetic code is messed up, that's when we need to have the option to be
Well,
able to do it.
For the sake of the conversation, let's talk about the healthy ones.
Well, again, as I said at the beginning, that's not something I want to put on someone else.
You said earlier, I remember you saying that you agree that life is the most basic human right. So why are we going to put that aside for convenience?
That is not my decision to make. At the end of the day, I don't have to meet the Lord.
You were saying, okay, it's life after birth. Yeah. So what is it in the womb if it's not life? I mean, it's certainly not like an animal. It's not like a frog or anything. It's a human life, is it not? What species is it?
It doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have a lot of things that would classify it as a person.
People in comas don't have consciousness. That doesn't mean you could just kill them.
Having perception at one point, we'll classify it as that. So people in comas had perception at one point, makes them people. People unborn don't have perception yet, different situation.
You want to add something?
Babies in the womb can differentiate the mother and the father's voice. They listen to music.
Brain doesn't have to be fully developed for perception to be a thing that exists. And if we're going by off of what she just said.
Lisa, by the way.
What Lisa just said, which is that brain activity happens immediately. Just to clarify, so you think that the second that sperm hits that egg, there's brain activity?
No, that's not what I'm saying. Until they're born, they're not a human, but it's because they're not conscious. But they are. They're conscious in the womb. So it contradicts your whole argument.
Is that the defining factor of human life? That's the question. You need to be ideologically consistent with these arguments when it comes to this stuff, because if that's the case, if consciousness defines human life, then back to my point, if someone's out, they're unconscious, they're in a coma, etc., by that logic, you are okay with killing them.
Why are you all wearing masks? Why are you not wearing masks? You want to choose not to wear a mask, that's your choice.
Well, we're talking about abortion here.
You right now are committing murder. You are walking around and you're spreading whatever you are, or whatever could be in your body.